So then we think, remember what we're doing. Just don't do these things automatically. This is Tibetan style, but it's got great meaning, you know, where it's really auspicious to offer something before receiving it, isn't it? We always know that. If we go to visit a house, we don't go empty-handed. So it's really auspicious to want to give something. So here, you know, because we're using our mind only, but don't hold back. Use your creative imagination and think as big as possible. So imagine the words it's saying. Basically what we're offering is the universe. What we mean, and what that means is we're offering the objects of the universe. And what are they? Well, they're all the things that make people happy. So we're offering these to the Buddha as a request for the teachings. And so think really big and really meaningfully. Don't just do it like some empty religious thing, you know. It's great meaning. Okay. Sajipaki Jogshing Metog Tramri Rablingji Nide Genpadi Sange Jingdu Mikte Ulwagi Drokon Namdag Jingla Chapashog. So it's always nice to now imagine the Buddha who is here, imagine the Buddha whom we're requesting, who happily receives our offering. Idam Guru Rajna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Wonderful. And now we can prepare our minds, as the Lamas would say, set our motivation. But the first two lines are reminding us, for those of us who are Buddhists already, reiterating our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings. And the second two lines are making this, you know, stating our motivation or stating our purpose for our being together. That's what it means. So, you know, we're thinking that it's saying by the virtuous actions of doing this action of listening to the Dharma, by the virtuous karma we create, the virtuous imprints we put into our mind, that's what the meaning of merit means. May I become a Buddha for long term so I can benefit all sentient beings. It's the biggest motivation you can have, the most expansive, you know. Thinking to develop these, get these tools from these teachings so I can develop my own potential, so I can help others. That's the idea. Sangye charang soke chognamla jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog sangye charang soke chognamla jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi dagi chunyen gi personam ki drola penchir sangye drupa shog Sangye charang toke chognamla, jangcho baru dagni kyab suchi, dagi chernyen gi personam ki, drola penchir sangye drupa shog. Okay. Okay, so we'll leave the prayer for now. We might finish with reading it all again, Mary Ellen. So let's just put it again, let's just get this dependent arising and emptiness in the right framework, you know. I mean, when we first hear the teachings, we just hear these millions of seemingly disconnected ideas, don't we? But and this is what's so important to remember. You know, if you do choose, I always use this example, but it's a very helpful one. If you're studying some body of knowledge, if you want to become an acupuncturist, become a musician, become a surgeon, whatever it might be, become a typist, you're presented with a body of knowledge, you're presented with the theories, and the point is this, whether it's even as simple as making a cake, the point is this. If it is valid information, if that body of knowledge is valid, this is the point, is valid, it means first, intellectually, it needs to be coherent. This is something I cannot stress enough. And we kind of get this, we take this as a given. We don't question this, because we call it science. We know if you're going to become a musician, it's not just some hippie trippy thing that you cross your fingers and hope for the best. Even making a cake, you don't just sort of put things on the counter in the kitchen and cross your fingers. We know you have theories that have been tested by somebody. That's a knowledge holder. Knowledge holder in Tibetan, the word is rigsin, knowledge holder. We need knowledge holders. It's a marvelous word. And that means a person who has internalized that body of knowledge and then you have to then check that you're confident in that person. Now, the trouble is, as soon as we come to what we think of as spiritual knowledge, religion, we lose the plot. And even though we know Buddha is not a creator, even though we know this is not from revelation, even though we know it came from his own direct experience, we still are so addicted to this idea of religious knowledge being something that is not coherent. It doesn't need to be coherent. And this is, there's something interesting about this, because if we do adhere to a philosophical view of the world that's called, say, Christianity, which asserts a creator. In a way, we feel that you can't prove it because God is perfect. How can you prove that God is right? Because that's implying that you can become God, and that is a really shocking sin. So so we've kind of misunderstood that, I'd suggest, misused that, and think, well, anything goes. I can believe whatever I like. We can shop around and choose and believe in something. I'm allowed to believe what we like, we think. Now, the fact is, as Buddha would say, we are allowed. But what's the point of believing? Believing isn't the point. So the point is, with a body of knowledge, and if we think of it in a coherent way, and this is just as, whether it's a body of knowledge that's called cooking or Buddhism, it's got to be the same thing. If it is valid, it has to be coherent at first intellectually. This is an incredibly powerful point. So then this is what, as we know from the Tibetan tradition, Buddhism has been there about 1,200 years or something. It first came there in 700 with, 700 or 800 with the Indians coming over. And so, over the years, they've carried on the great Nalanda monastery tradition, as His Holiness says, carrying on from the 7th, 8th, 9th century in India, this amazing monastic university system. If you've been on a pilgrimage with me, and if you do come up with a pilgrimage with me or anybody else, we'll go to that amazing place just near Rajgir, where Lord Buddha taught all his taught all his sutras, many of his teachings at the Vulture Peak, and we're going to read the Heart Sutra before we finish today as well. So, when we go to that place, this amazing place. Well, the Tibetans carried that tradition over, and it's still a living, real tradition of that knowledge back since that time. This great monastic university system that the Nalanda tradition, as His Holiness said, all the texts, all the great masters from that period, are still fully developed, fully studied in the Tibetan monastic university system, which has been there for like 1,200 years or something. So, as we know, with Tsongkhapa, our lineage Lama, the Gelugpas of the 14th century, he took the teachings of Atisha, one of these 11th century great beings from Nalanda, who came to India, came to Tibet and spent the last 15-something years of his life there. He wrote Tsongkhapa's presentation that's known, as we know very well, as soon as we become Tibetan Buddhists, we hear all about the Lam Rim, this term, a gradual path. What it is this presentation is what Atisha did. It's based upon this text by Atisha in the 11th century. So Tsongkhapa wrote this big fat one in the 14th century. So he used as his basis this simple little text, seemingly simple little text called Light that guides you on your path, on your way. And what Atisha did, he took the essence from all this vast body of knowledge, this vast body of metaphysics and psychology and philosophy and epistemology and whatever, studied in these monasteries. He took the essence of all of these and presented them one in an orderly way, which is pretty logical, because anything you study, you learn it in an orderly way. You learn first junior school, then high school, university, then postgraduate. We get that completely. That's the implication of the word, a gradual path. Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and then you graduate. So it's a really perfect term for us using grades, So what he did was he took it presented in an orderly way, but the crucial point is, and this is not evident for us if we first study the Lam Rim because it's medieval, so we can't get our head around the way they present things. It's presented in an orderly way, but from the point of view of experience. From the point of view of experience. So, as we know, we've been talking about dependent arising and emptiness. Now, it's taught in this framework of the Lam Rim, it's taught at the very end of the university. So, in other words, obviously, if anything that you teach, you study in university, if you're studying maths, and you go through high school, junior school you start, then you narrow down and you get through high school, and then you really know you want to study math. Then when you get to university, that's the culmination of everything you've learned. You don't branch off and do other things that you've never heard about. Everything leads you to that. And this is the point here. That everything, the way the Lam Rim is presented by Tsongkhapa, it's taught as the 6th of the 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva, which is the final stages of the practice of the Bodhisattva. Before the stage before that, which is the beginnings of the compassion wing, is where you begin to cultivate bodhicitta. And I want to talk about that today, and the relationship between emptiness and compassion. To realize the absolute relationship between emptiness, independent arising, and compassion. And then before you get to the compassion wing, which is university level, you do high school and junior school. And, so everything, it mightn't be, as I've said before, the teachings about emptiness and dependent arising are not even mentioned in junior school, high school, and the first stages of university, hardly even mentioned. But they're implicit. It's implicit. When you look back, you can see what you've been learning and how it's leading you inexorably to the final understanding of the way everything exists. So everything, it has to be coherent, and it has to be integrated. It has to be incremental. Any body of knowledge has to be that. But all I know is, I mentioned this, when I first heard Lama Zopa Rinpoche teaching the Lam Rim when I was 31 and heard the Dharma for the first time in 1976, I was drowning in confusion for 1 month. I sat there because I knew this is something here I had to get, and there's no way I wouldn't go. I didn't have a clue. I couldn't put anything together. I had no idea what he was talking about. As for hearing it all as experiential, forget that. It took me a long time. Even after I became a nun a year and a half later, and then I went and worked for Wisdom. I was working for Wisdom Publications, and one of the many books I began to edit then in the mid-80s, after I became a nun. 78 I became a nun. Then I was working for Wisdom, and I was editing Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, which we know is Lama Zopa's favourite Lam Rim book, a commentary using Tsongkhapa's teachings, but other teachings as well. Early 20th century Lama. And that too, when I start to edit it, this arcane, I could not get a grip on any of this. As for seeing it as incremental, as for seeing it as integrated, as for seeing it as coherent, I wouldn't have had a clue in heaven about that. And it takes a long time. Now I can talk about it a little bit experientially. I haven't got that much deep knowledge about the contents of it all, but you begin to understand, as you start to develop, So normally the teachings are given, we can see that with the lamas, they're given in 2 ways. One, you present, and this is particularly the philosophical way, and this is very much the way Geshe-la teaches, isn't it? Geshe Dagpa. It's presenting the facts in the texts with low key, no drama, no extrapolating, just present the facts. That's the philosophical way of presenting the facts, and we need that. But there's other ways of teaching too, which is called experiential. So Lama Yeshe, from day one, he was just, for me, I joke about it, that he was like born a hippie. He was extraordinary. He was born in this medieval system, but he somehow had this extraordinary karmic connection with people, so-called Western people, us modern people, put it that way, modern people. We could be Asian, we could be Caucasian, whatever we are. He somehow understood that the only way to communicate with us was in our language. And it was like, when I edit his books, it's astonishing his level of knowledge about the language. He had lousy grammar, Sometimes I haven't got a clue what he's saying because his grammar's so amazing, But I was able to take words and use them in such a powerful way. So he taught only ever experientially. Lama Zopa, in his own way too, totally, he speaks from the heart, experientially. He kind of, experiential teachings is a bit like Bach is like the classical presentation, and then kind of hip hop, or the other one, rap. That's the way Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe teaches. That's the experiential way, So it's hard, but it's hard for us if we don't hear the experiential. It's hard to get that taste for ourselves, but that's what we need to do. And that's why, when you first hear the teachings, and then I know for myself, they were the ones who hooked me. Lama Zopa Lama Yeshe were the ones who hooked me, got me, absolutely. In fact, Lama Yeshe first. I'm not even sure Lama Zopa would have been able to hook me because mine was so ignorant. And Lama just had this way of grabbing maniacs, somehow. It took me 10 years to recognize Lama Zopa Rinpoche as my root guru, along with Lama Yeshe. I knew it intellectually, but it took my heart 10 years to catch up. So I know that after I heard the teachings from them, then I knew, I'd not studied anything in my life. I left school when I was 16. I was kind of arrogant. I thought, look at these boring old universities. Who wants to study all that rubbish they rabbit on about? So I did my own trip, my own life, and then I was like 30, became a nun, 31. And then 2 years later, a year later, when I was at Manjushri Institute, Lama Yeshe Centre in England, no longer, but it was then, Lama started what he called the Geshe program. It's the forerunner of the Master's program. Lama was amazing, It was initially a 7-year program. So I remember the first year I'd watch all this group of people going to Geshe Tekchok. He was the philosophy teacher. And they'd go to his room at 5 o'clock every day and have an hour and a half of teachings, and they'd do their debate later on. And I'd think, what are they talking about? I didn't even know what it meant to study philosophy. I had no interest. I didn't even know what it meant. They're studying the Dharma. And when I first became a nun, I wanted to become a nun and I wanted to keep working. I didn't want to meditate. I thought that was the dumbest idea I ever heard, to sit with my eyes crossed and my legs closed, or whatever, whichever way around. I had no interest in meditation. I didn't know what that meant. I just wanted to work. And because editing was my trip, I liked to edit. That was what I wanted to do. And then even the first year at Manjushri Institute, I worked, doing wisdom the whole time, editing, loving it. And then I'd watch all these people debating with each other at lunchtime. And I think, what the hell are they talking about? I had no conceptual concept, no idea at all. And then in the second year, I heard the term dura, which means collected topics. And it's one of the first texts you study in the monastic university system. And that was one of the Geshe Tekchok was studying, the teaching at the time. Dura. And something triggered. I didn't know what it meant, and I went to Geshe Tekchok. I said, I think I'd like to come and study. I said, I'm very busy with wisdom, and they did it, 5 days a week. He had classes 5 days a week. And I said, I'm quite busy, but can I come occasionally? He said, yes. So all I know is when I went to the first class, I blissed out. It was like, finally, I was like 35 by then. That was finally I found what I wanted to study in my life. Finally. It somehow something triggered when I heard that term. It took me to hear that word dura, collected topics, the first text you study in the monasteries. And I did 2 years of philosophy with Geshe Tekchok. But it took me that long to understand the purpose of it. That's when that gave me the basis for understanding the Lam Rim. That come slowly after years of even editing these teachings. Slowly the penny began to drop. And that 2 years was profound for me. Which is an extra point I'm making here. We can study the Lam Rim, absolutely experiential, do retreats on it. But then you've got to go to the texts that are the source, that the Lam Rim is sourced from, the entire body of knowledge in the monastic university system they study for 20 years. That's the source. So then, once you've got the taste, once you've got the experience, once you know the purpose of practice, once you know you've got to put your money where your mouth is, then you can study. Then it has profound meaning. I mean, for example, I studied one text called Tari, which is logic. I mean, this bizarre, arcane, medieval, older than medieval kind of syllogisms and concepts. They were the most ridiculous things, but it was so profound, because when you understand that logic is the way you smash delusions. But if you don't know about delusions first and don't know about the Lam Rim, it doesn't have much sense. It's too boring, So somehow for me that was so auspicious. I felt so appropriate. If I'd studied with the philosophy, it would have been boring to tears. But having the Lam Rim first and then studying the philosophy, that gave depth, profound, real depth. And suddenly you start to see this picture, this map manifesting. And every time, and this is the point with the teachings, every time we hear about karma, it helps us understand emptiness. Every time we hear about compassion, it helps us understand dependent arising. Every time you hear about dependent arising, it helps you understand karma. Every time you hear about the delusions, it helps you understand karma. The mind, everything is integrated. It has to be, if it's a coherent body of knowledge. And we won't find that out until we study it. So I can't stress that enough. And then you have enthusiasm. Because everything you hear, including the most arcane logic, is you can hear it from the point of view of experience. Because that's the thing about logic that it really struck me when I studied that text. I mean, there are all these arcane syllogisms, but the point of logic is because when we understand the mind studying in high school, we understand how delusions are liars, how they're misconceptions, how they're elaborations. Then we realize the only way to conquer them is to use logic, to use wisdom, to argue with these insane misconceptions that have kept us locked in eons of suffering. That's the crucial thing, and that's the unique approach of the Buddhist psychological model. And we won't know that if we don't study Lorig and the other texts that explain the mind to us. So the fact is, dependent arising and emptiness is the culmination of the entire path. And that's the two wings. The wisdom wing, the culmination of the wisdom wing is dependent arising and emptiness, and the culmination of the compassion wing is bodhicitta, compassion and bodhicitta. So we haven't talked about bodhicitta and compassion. Let's do that, just briefly, and see it in the framework of this progress through these stages of practice that we're describing here, So in the whole path, all the way from total ignorance, delusions, being miserable, samsaric, unhappy person, going through these stages of practice, the evolution of these stages of practice, junior school, which is where mainly you just abide by the laws of karma, you control your body, speech, and you don't harm sentient beings. And then you gradually start to work on your mind, you go to high school, and you start to go internally, and you start to realize you get to the root of the problem, which is these insane, demented, delusional, disturbing emotions that are the source of all our pain. And you begin to see how they're delusional, how they're misconceptions, how they're elaborations. That's not implied, that's implicit in high school. I mentioned this last time. The explicit teaching in high school, the explicit teaching in high school, the explicit teaching in junior school, abide by the laws of karma. It's discipline, virtue, morality, don't harm sentient beings. But the implicit teaching is a first example of dependent arising. Then the second level of practice, high school, where you start to get to the root of the problem, the explicit teaching is the disturbing nature of attachment and anger and jealousy and pride that cause you to go crazy and cause you to harm others. Look at the universe. But the implicit teaching is getting us closer to emptiness, is how the delusions are misconceptions. That's not taught so much at that level, but it's a powerful point. And this is leading us, so gradually healing this crazy, demented, separate person. So starting at being a victim, starting at the samsaric level, starting as a person who's miserable and neurotic, you're completely cut off from others. You're completely separate. This neurotic sense of an isolated, miserable, depressed, unhappy, useless, hopeless, ugly me. That's the irony of ego. We're nothing. We're separate, cut off, no connection. And we see the entire universe through the lenses of our own demented needs. That's the suffering of samsara. You gradually start to abide by the laws of karma. You begin to heal that. You start to get some discipline. You start to become conscious of your body and speech. Then you get even more, you're healing yourself already, and you just do purification. Then you go to high school. You start to look into the mind. You're healing yourself even more. You start to become conscious. This is incredible. You become conscious, and so you can unpack and unravel the contents of your crazy mind and identify the delusions from the virtues. You're healing yourself. As you're going, you're becoming less neurotic, more disciplined, less miserable, less lonely, less depressed, less angry, less attached, more whole. You're healing yourself. Now you get to the compassion wing, you're already incredible. You realize, my God, we're all in the same boat. Look, these beings whom we could only see through the lenses of our own demented needs, we now see them as who they are, even more because we've subdued our own crazy body, speech, and mind. Now we get to realize we are all in the same boat. And so you grow that compassion wing to an insane degree. I mean, it sounds like what we can achieve, according to the Buddha, with Bodhichitta, and we'll discuss today, would be mental illness for Western psychology. Literally mental illness. There's no reference point. There's no anything remotely like the way Buddha describes the levels of compassion and love and empathy that we can accomplish. So what we're doing there is completely smashing any sense of a separate self. But by the time you've accomplished bodhicitta, this outrageous aspiration, the state of mind that has two aspirations. One is that, on the basis of incredible compassion and love, we're going to discuss, you only want to help others. It's like you're like a mother for the entire universe is your most precious children. You only think of others. From the first second you get bodhicitta, there's no longer the thought of self in the normal, separate, neurotic, deluded way. That's gone. You haven't realized emptiness yet. You haven't finished the path yet, but you're so astonishing. And then you grow all these qualities, love, compassion, great compassion, and then it culminates in this outrageous paradigm shift in the mind where others now are the only ones that exist for you. You've so healed yourself. You've become such an amazing being that you don't even need to bother with yourself any longer. You're done. You're cooked, You're not finished yet, but you're so astonishing. There's only now a sense of others and such wisdom to see the others' minds. Only the wish to help others and the wish to never give up over how many lifetimes it takes you to become a fully enlightened Buddha, because then you'll be qualified perfectly to help every living being without exception. That's bodhicitta. Outrageous. But you've still got more to do. So the final stages of the bodhisattva path, the first 4 of the perfections of what you accomplish in life after life after life when you bop around as this bodhisattva, accumulating vast amounts of positive energy by connecting with sentient beings and helping them, purifying your own mind and connecting more with others. The first 4 perfections. This is after you've accomplished bodhicitta. Generosity, morality, patience and perseverance. And then in your meditation seat, the last 2, single point of concentration and wisdom that realizes emptiness. And then you've perfected the 6 And then you hop onto the Mahayana, onto the tantric path, the postgraduate, and you become a Buddha. So it's totally integrated, totally logically, experientially, organically, connected. And to see that gives us great courage. And when we know, in theory, even in the beginning, that it's all connected, every piece links to the next, then every time you hear the teachings, it puts another piece of the puzzle into place. You join the dots. And then you get some confidence in the path. But this takes us time, It just takes us time. So you go from being separate, lonely, bereft, concrete, neurotic, despairing, miserable, to the most healed, blissful being, fully developed in love, compassion. Attachment gone, depression gone, delusions gone, a separate sense of self gone. This is like mental illness in the Western psychology, like demented, in Western psychology, we give equal status, don't we? To hate, despair, psychosis, love, compassion, generosity. We hope to have more of the second lot, but we don't quite know why. But we would never posit the possibility, that, as the Buddha does, that we can rid the mind utterly of all the neurotic, schizophrenic, demented states of mind and fully develop the positive ones. The concept is so simple, but so simple we can't hear it because it's so embedded in our being that love, anger and jealousy and depression are normal. Some recently in an email from a person who's consulting me, my therapist told me I've got to live with this. It's probably not going to be able to change. That's how we think in the West, because we see it as concrete. Buddha's view is outrageous, just amazing. And it gives us amazing confidence when we can hear it. So you go from being neurotic, separate, depressed, miserable, to the most blissful being. Because bliss, and don't think this is a joke, it's literally true. Total joy, bliss are our natural state. When we've unencumbered the mind. When the mind is unencumbered from all the junk. So that's something to look forward to. It's very encouraging. So, let's look at the compassion wing. Already before you've even realized emptiness, already by subduing your body, speech and mind and lessening your own neuroses and growing your own heart and healing yourself and becoming a more marvelous person, you just naturally chipping away at that sense of a separate self. This idea that that even having a sense of a separate self is a delusion is very bizarre in Western psychology and neuroscience, because the absolute starting point in our modern, philosophical materialist views of the world is these separate people, and that the idea that you can stop being a separate person just sounds kind of too absurd for words, But this is the point that Buddha's making. So, as we know, that the essence of the virtuous qualities, the essence of those, they can call them love and compassion, even compassion. That's why we call it the compassion wing. It's probably the essence. So what are they? What is love? What is compassion? What's the definition? Well, first of all, if we look at, again, the Buddhist model of the mind, which we discussed in high school, which is, Buddha divides the contents of our mental consciousness into 3 categories. That's it. No fourth. All the thousands of states of mind. Hundreds of thousands, 3 categories, no fourth. The first lot, as we know very well from talking, they're all the voices of the root delusion called ego grasping. That's attachment and aversion, the 3 root delusions, and all the 84,000, as they always talk about, Buddha's is stating, 84,000 neurotic states of mind, subsumed to these 3. And all they are rooted in those 3. And these 3 are beyond profound, like we talked about in the high school. Then you've got the positive qualities. So the main emphasis in high school isn't to grow the positive ones. The main emphasis is to get rid of the negative ones. And by implication, the positive ones are grown. That's the natural consequence, isn't it? But so we've got the positive ones. And in the compassion wing, if you like, we're still trying to rid the mind of the rubbish, but we're actively growing the positive ones. In junior school, we're controlling the body and speech. In high school, we're controlling the neurotic delusions. In compassion wing, we continue those 2 jobs, but now we're proactively growing, enhancing the positive ones. So the key characteristic of the negative ones is they're rooted in the separate sense of neurotic, panic-stricken, fear-based me. The key characteristic of the virtuous ones is they're not rooted in neurosis. They are, relatively speaking, valid concepts because they're connected. They are rooted in interdependence. If I'm talking to Mary Ellen, I always use this example. It's a very simple one, but very profound. When we're chatting away, and you can see by our body language, we're being very friendly. We're leaning towards each other. She cracks jokes and I laugh. I crack jokes, she laughs. We empathize with each other's misery. You can see immediately, and you can feel this. You put it this way: this virtue is predominating. If I'm laughing, if I'm delighting in Mary Ellen's good qualities or something, that means I love her. That's called love. May she be happy. May you be happy, Mary Ellen. I'm so happy when you're happy. That's love. Compassion, when she tells me about her headache, I have empathy. That's compassion. May you not suffer. Those virtues, you think about it, so obvious. When you're overwhelmed by attachment and anger, it is not possible to access that part of yourself. They have become quiet. The anger and attachment are completely self-centered, naturally, necessarily. So they suffocate our love and compassion. So when love and compassion are predominating, then they're quietening down the attachment and the aversion. It's so clear that they're profoundly and utterly different. We say in Australia and England that they're like chalk and cheese. They look, it probably depends on the cheese, I suppose, but they look similar. But they're completely and profoundly different in their character. That's the virtues and non-virtues. And this is unique to Buddhist psychology, you know. So here in the compassion wing, we've subdued our bodhicitta mind to some degree. And we're talking about, even just relatively for us who are trying to also do the compassion wing, but I'm talking about if you really accomplish that, you'd be a pretty amazing person already. You'd have renunciation. What's renunciation? As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, you have renunciation when just the thought of another moment of attachment is so repulsive. I've heard two different examples. One of them, he says, is like using used toilet paper. And the other one, it's like being in a septic tank. So it's kind of profound. Way to go to get that level. So meanwhile, now we go to the compassion wing. We're trying to cultivate, grow, enhance, cultivate the positive qualities. Equally, also continuing to smash the deeper levels of the delusions. Of course, they're the obstacles. So, okay, we're not discussing emptiness yet. That's coming yet. So there's a whole, as we know in the text, there's two main methods for cultivating all the positive qualities. One is called the 6 causes and 1 result, or something like that, or the 7-point something. And the other one's is said to be a more advanced one, and all the Tibetans love it, all our great lamas. This is their favorite. It's called Lojong. It's called mind. Different terms they use. It's called exchanging self for others. It's this more radical approach to smashing ego grasping and its main voices, attachment and all the rubbish, and actively, proactively, profoundly growing love, compassion, and all the other virtuous states of mind. So Pamonka Rinpoche in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, he teaches one method where he combines the first part of the first lot and some of the second. So there's a total of 11 little techniques. And like all of these teachings, they're all coherent. They're step by step. So and these are done as meditations and as analyses, you do analysis. So the very first one, and this is a huge one, we can spend the rest of the 2 hours on just this point. And that's the very first one, is the development of what's called equanimity. So there's different uses of this. In the Hinayana stages of the path, the junior school and high school, what you try to do there more than anything is, by controlling your body and speech and your mind, you're getting more equanimity within yourself, more stable. I mean, I don't joke when I say if we're overwhelmed by delusions, we're all bipolar. It's just a question of degree. We go up like crazy into the bliss lands of attachment, getting everything what it wants, and we think we found heaven. And then when the bubble bursts, because it's not realistic, we go crashing down to despair. We all recognize that. We all have about 1,000 mini bipolar episodes in a day, and I'm not being sarcastic if we understand the meaning, It's being caught up in attachment and aversion, like drunken, mad people. So equanimity at this first stage is within yourself, some stability, because you're working on yourself, and that's like bliss. That's like sanity. You're not so overwhelmed by the outside world, being pulled from pillar to post by the smallest things in the world, which is how we are now. We all go crazy. That's why we all go crazy. That's equanimity. Now here, the equanimity we're describing here is in relation to sentient beings. And this equanimity, and it's the foundation practice upon which the others are growing. Without this, you can't go further to get love, compassion, great compassion, bodhicitta. It's the basis, it's the foundation upon which everything is built. It's fundamental to understand it, even intellectually first. We have lots of lovely ideas about what equanimity sounds like, but let's get it really super clear. This equanimity is in reference to all the sentient beings of the universe. So right now, what's the status quo? The status quo, being samsaric, is having the three poisons: ego grasping, attachment, aversion, which we work on in high school, try to subdue. Here, we're now trying to subdue them from a different perspective. We're trying to subdue these three main delusions in reference to how we dump these onto all the sentient beings. So think about this. As far as we're concerned, through the lenses of ignorance, attachment, and aversion, there are three categories of sentient beings. There are those that we call friends. Who are they? Objects of attachment. Then we have a group called enemies. We mightn't use that word, but hear the meaning. Objects of aversion. And who are they? People who haven't done what we want. People who have thwarted our attachment. People who haven't done what our attachment wants. A friend, by definition, from this perspective, is a person who does what our attachment wants. A person who is an enemy, by definition, is a person who's consciously, actively, or even just their presence is not what our attachment wants. So they're in the enemy category. We have aversion for them, if not outright anger. And what's the third category? Well, that's 99.99% of the universe. And who are they? They're called strangers. And what are they? What's the state of mind that projects onto calls people strangers? This is an interesting point. The root delusion is ego grasping. Okay, the three poisons. The root delusion is ego grasping, ignorance that doesn't understand the true nature of reality. But it's got different functions. This ignorance. So in the very first level of practice, when we look at the 10 non-virtues, and I didn't talk much about those last three, but the first seven are the body and speech. Control the body, control the speech, and begin to control the mind. So in reference to the three poisons, one manifestation of ignorance. Okay, the three poisons, the 10 non-virtues at the very first stages of practice. The three we're trying to harness at that level are the grosser levels of attachment, which is like intense craving. The grosser levels of anger, which are like heavy duty wanting others to suffer. We can all be angry, but then you let go of it. But if you can't let go and you want the person to suffer, look at the world. What do you think makes you harm somebody? Because you can't stop the anger. It becomes this malice, ill will, whatever these words are, That's a heavy level of anger. Now, the heavy level of ego grasping here is a particular kind, is like ignorance. They call it wrong view. Call it fundamentalism. Look at the world. People narrow-minded, racism, sexism. I mean, you listen to really ignorant people talk. I mean, we're all ignorant. We've all got this. But people have got super ignorant views, That's called... or jingoism, all these words, I mightn't use that word this much anymore, but so totally fanatic about race, about gender, about colour, about whatever it might be, fanatics, religion, anything. That's fundamentalism. That's the characteristic of the ignorance that we're trying to steady at the first level of practice. It's a manifestation of ego grasping. As a result of ego grasping, you have this very deep, deep ignorance. Everything's black and white. You can't see there's nothing nuanced. There's no sense of connectedness between it. That's a real strong manifestation of ego grasping, which is the major way we all suffer. Now here, in terms of the sentient beings, and we're trying to get this equanimity, in terms of the manifestation of ego grasping, here is indifference to people who neither harm you nor help you. So we've got sentient beings who help us, they're our beloveds. We have people who harm us, we don't like them. And we have people who do neither. So the consequence of that ignorance here is complete and total and profound indifference. Could not care less. 99% of the universe could all drop dead because they're called strangers. And this is a really profound one to see. We all have it naturally. Friends and enemies preoccupy our lives. We think as much, if not more, about our enemies than we do about our friends. It's the joke. But strangers, by necessity, they're people, which is the vast majority of all sentient beings, who in this particular time of our lives have neither helped us nor harmed us. So they are literally invisible. That's what a stranger is. So if we look at it this way, we should be totally embarrassed that this is the way we see the world. But this is the given of the universe. This is the monkeys and ants as well. The universe is caught up in these delusions. Buddhist psychology refers to all sentient beings, not just us, not just humans. So everybody in the universe lives in terms of friends, enemies, and strangers. And it's so utterly normal, we would never think outside that box. And it's weird if we do. People who talk about loving their enemies, we think they're wacko, And we know those teachings are there. Buddha doesn't own this teaching. I mean, any good person would feel that way. But this is what we're trying to conquer here. So equanimity is what we're trying to cultivate. And the specific point about equanimity is very precise. Each of these 11 stages is very precise. We get them all muddled up. We get all emotional about them, all wishy-washy. Equanimity is a precise state of mind. It's a state of mind that we're trying to cultivate as the foundation, and I'll tell you the logic in a minute, where we're cultivating the view that the person we label friend, the person we label enemy, and the person we label stranger, it's one point, that this is the point, that they are the same as each other from one point of view. They're equal to each other from one point of view. Their wish to be happy and their wish not to suffer. That's what equanimity is. So we use logic to prove that, to break down ego's ridiculous misconceptions. And that's already pretty profound, I tell you. Once we've begun to get this, we then build upon that and we grow these 11, each one expanding and finally culminating in this outrageous attitude called bodhicitta, It's incremental, gradual, very precise. So let's look at how we do that then, because these are all so-called analytical meditations. You're using your concepts, you're using your intelligence to argue with ego's ridiculous misconceptions. Of course, this is hard work. This is where logic comes in. So, okay, how would you do equanimity? There's so many ways of doing it, so many methods. But let's just be casual about it, thinking as we're talking, even right now, have in front of you to the left, just as we're discussing, a person you adore right now. Don't have your guru or anything. Have a person like a beloved whom you're attached to. Because right now, being the way we are, it's literally impossible for us to have love for somebody we're not attached to, or to have attachment for somebody we don't love. This is because they so come together for us. It's really important. So have an ordinary person there, like your beloved boyfriend, or your whoever you're attached to, but whom you put in the friend label. Then in the middle, right in front of you, eyeball to eyeball, put a person you have aversion for. We might use the word enemy. That sounds quite intense. But it's anybody whom we don't have attachment for and who's not a stranger. So it's, some people. It might be a politician. Could be your ex-husband. Could be your sister. Could be your boss. And don't think of it as you have to hate them. No, aversion is the fundamental state of mind that is the source of anger. Aversion. In other words, attachment is like, oh, that's nice, and you go towards it. Aversion is, oh, no, thank you, go away from it. Indifference is you just don't notice. So attachment and aversion are quite subtle. So your friend is a beloved whom you're attached to and whom you have love for and compassion. In fact, they're the only ones we tend to have love and compassion for, and that's normal in our life. But as we say, it's got strings attached, and that's what we have to learn to look at to try and get equanimity. And as Lama Zopa would say, it's unstable. The love and compassion we have now is unstable. And we can see that. That's why we change, Because as soon as that, my beloved friend, as soon as my boyfriend starts being mean to me and being what was already there, but I couldn't see it because I was as blind as a bat because I only had attachment. Now I start to see he's cheating on me or whatever. Or even just to see normal faults that are in everybody, but because when you've got attachment, you can't see them because you're blind. Then you start to see faults. So, then that's gradually, you get seeing more and more faults, and gradually he goes from the friend category into the enemy category, especially when you've finally given him up, the ex-boyfriend, and now you see him as an enemy. But so this is one really good example. So the third one. So have your first person, have a beloved on the left in front of you. Have a person you don't like in front of you. And we know these people keep changing roles, but have the present ones. And then the third category, put a person whose face you know enough just to put them there, but has not touched your life. Could be the fellow down the road. Could be somebody at work you've never talked to. That's a stranger. So observe. We have to observe what we've got towards these three people. So now let's just do an analysis to show how absurd friends, enemies, and strangers are, and how unstable it is, and how equanimity is the only way to go. So look, okay. So first of all, always one example I think of. I've got no boys here. I've got a boy. Who's Chris? I've asked Chris before, I'm sure, a boy or a girl. I'm not being rude, because you don't know these days. Maybe you're a non-binary person. I think I'm non-binary. I've decided that's my label. I'm now going off topic. Never mind, I can't see a boy. I'll pretend there's a boy here. Fred. Okay, I'll use Fred. Doesn't matter. So first of all, Fred, let's say Mary Ellen. I always use this example. Mary Ellen's Fred's friend. She knows Fred, and he lives down the road, and he gets migraines. And she tells me about it. Mary Ellen's my friend, And I go, oh, I try to be sympathetic, don't I? Oh, poor Fred, does he really get migraines? And I talk about 1 minute, then I change the subject. Pass the sugar, please. I mean, I try to have compassion, but I don't know Fred. He hasn't touched my life. I couldn't care less. He's really remote. I vaguely know his face. It's hard to have empathy. Now, I know every one of you are saying, well, when I read the paper, I cry for strangers. Of course you do. But we're looking at classic way delusions function, okay? And if you've got any beyond this, you're pretty good. That means you're practicing. We're looking at the classic way the world sees things. So then Fred's nothing to me. I try to be nice, try to be sympathetic. But let's say Mary Ellen introduces me to Fred and we fall in love and I move in with Fred. He moves me in down the road at number 7. Now Fred has gone immediately from stranger category to friend. We know this. Now look at the difference. I see Fred, I understand him, I love him, I adore him, I have love, I have compassion, I have empathy, I spend my money on getting doctors. People say, oh, Robina's so compassionate. Look how she looks after Fred. Well, excuse me, I didn't look after Fred when he was my stranger. He could have dropped dead. I wouldn't have even cried. But we think, oh, that's normal. No, it's not normal. It's called seeing life through attachment. So suddenly, because now Fred is real for me, I see him through the lenses of my attachment. He satisfies my needs. He adores me, loves me, looks after me, gives me things. So suddenly he's this real person. And this is normal life, people. We live with our friends, enemies, and strangers. This is not surprising, but we just think it's normal. It's normal because attachment is what defines it. Attachment is what is now rampant. I'm seeing Fred mainly through the lenses of my attachment, which means already he looks divinely handsome. Everything about it is heavenly. I absolutely adore the man. And he is a nice person. He is kind. He does love me. He is generous. Don't argue. He is all those things. But he was all those things before I met him as well. But I didn't see it because he didn't affect me. He didn't serve my needs. That's the ignorance we have. So I'm getting to the point. Now suddenly he starts to get, we start to sort of fall out of love. And eventually we become enemies and he moves me out. And he moves in Mary Ellen now. He's fallen in love with Mary Ellen. So now he's suddenly in the enemy category. So the point is this is so logical. We know this so clearly. This is so normal for us. We just don't question. But the point here is this. The point is this. The simple point is this. When Fred was a stranger, was nothing to me. How did he feel about his migraines? He only wanted to be happy. He did not want suffering. That is a provable fact. When he was my beloved friend, how did he feel about his migraines? Exactly the same, not a fraction of difference. And how did he feel about his migraines when he's my enemy? Exactly the same. In other words, another person who doesn't know Fred, who doesn't know, anything. Forget that one. The point is, when I see someone through the lenses of my attachment, I see them, I overblow their divineness, and they satisfy my needs. So I do have love and compassion. My little well of love and compassion fills up. And I pour it onto Fred. Because why? And it sounds so brutal, because I've got a vested interest, because attachment is getting what it wants. This is so brutal. It's so hard to hear this. Why do you think we all love our children? This is so shocking because we think this is something set in stone in the West. There's genetics. No, it's karma. Your baby, your baby totally looks divine. That's because, and you adore that baby and you have incredible compassion for that baby because you have attachment. And I'm sorry, if that is a stranger, you might have some compassion. But in the end, it's mainly attachment that makes it that way. And that's it's pretty sobering to think this way. So the enemy, the friend, and the stranger, they're just 3 labels, 3 projections, enormous emotional projections we put onto people, and we can't even see that we do that. Because when we're caught, and this is where ignorance comes in, ego grasping comes in, because we see them as existing from their own side out there as inherent friend, enemy, and stranger. And that's why we have so much drama. That's why when a person has an enemy and they can never forgive them, ever forgive them, they are evil in their bones. I remember, working with people in prison. I'm always happy to help people in prison if they want to get out of prison. I can't help them get out of prison. I give them practices, and I can see people practice. I've seen amazing changes in human beings. And there's one old guy I know in New York. He's getting close to death now. He's 58, 59 years, one of the longest serving people in New York State. He killed a girl when he was a young man, and she was 14. He was well known in a certain area of New York. And they've held up this constant, every time he's gone for appeals, 27 times he's been rejected. There's always these, because people remember. Even on Facebook, when I mentioned, because I've done did his biography, helped taking his letters and edited them for his wife, and did a little website for his, to try and just give his book away, his story, So he's been in prison 57, 58, maybe 59 years now. Incredible. He's done an amazing job. Completely transformed his mind. A totally devoted Buddhist practitioner. But there's this one person on Facebook, when she heard this, oh, that's that person back in Rochester in 19 something or other. No way. He killed a person. He deserves to suffer. That's the view of it. That's anger that fixed in stone. Anger rooted in ego grasping, that things are set in stone. Anger is he's an evil person. Look what he did to me. And that's and the 3.5 things that they did to me, or 57 things he did to me, they loom large, and we paint the whole person in the color of anger. When you're attached to them, they look like a saint. When they harm you, they look like a monster. And when they're stranger, they look boring. And we believe in those inherent, intrinsic, out there from their own side people. And this is the nightmare of the universe. Look at the suffering among the lions, the tigers, the humans, the ants, the monkeys, you name it. So equanimity, so we control our body and speech first to stop harming them because we don't want future suffering. Then we've got to look at the delusions and start to control those. That's already pretty incredible work. Now we use the same knowledge to start going rooted in deep to rip away these barriers that prevent us from being connected to sentient beings. And this is the foundation practice. The foundation, equanimity. It's just not logical. That an enemy and a friend and a stranger are these projections that we make up. We literally make them up. And dump them on those 3 people. So we see them only through the lenses of our needs. And therefore we love the ones who are kind to us. We hate the ones who aren't, and we couldn't care less about the rest. This is the nightmare of samsara. And we're trying to smash that misconception. So now when we hear that, we think, oh, you mean that rapist wasn't bad after all? No, no one's saying that. That person did indeed rape you. That person did indeed was kind to you. That's not being argued here. That whether they're kind, I mean, some people we can see are really unhappy, really demented, neurotic people, deeply suffering. Yes, they are. But that's got nothing to do with this here, and that's the problem. Because as soon as we hear that I'm trying to think that the enemy and the friend and the stranger want to be happy, we tend to think, oh, that means I'm supposed to sort of pat them on the head and say, well, it doesn't matter. It didn't really matter. They raped me. I mean, or you see suddenly all the animals are all, neither friend, enemy, or stranger. So you think, oh, I better start bringing in the python as my pet and pat it on the head. No, it'll eat you for breakfast. Be intelligent. So don't, if a person is a psychopath, they're a psychopath. They're suffering. If a person is a beloved person, they're a beloved. But that's not the issue here. But we use that as the logic. Well, of course I hate him. He's an evil person, we'll say. Of course I love her because she's a gorgeous person. There still might be right. There are good qualities in that person. But there's another discussion. It's our view of these people and the wrong logic we use for wanting them to be happy. So, okay, the bottom line for equanimity. Why do we want to see that they are equal in their wish to be happy and not suffer? Because right now, we're heading towards developing love and compassion for all of them. So what is love? May you be happy. What is compassion? May you not suffer. So right now, if we have that only for the first group, then we leave the last 2 groups out. But we want to have it for everybody. For right now, ego's logic for why I want you to be happy is because you make me happy. Ego's logic for hating you is because I don't want you to be happy because you make me suffer. That's not the right logic. That's ego's logic. We want to use this logic that from the point of view of the person. They could be a maniac. They could be a pedophile. They could be Mr. Trump. I don't care. It's not the issue. They, in their bones, are driven. And Buddha points this out. Every being in the universe is driven by the wish to be happy and is driven by the wish to suffer. That's the simple point about equanimity, to prove to ourselves that these 3 are equal from that point of view. They're not equal from the point of view of being fat or thin or ugly or beautiful or paranoid or delicious. No, but from the one point of view, they all yearn for happiness and not suffering. That's the basis of the beginning to develop proper love and compassion. Instead of, I want you to be happy because you make me happy, I want you to be happy, honey, because you want to be happy. That's the basis of equanimity. It's a very simple point. And it's not easy to get because we get very confused, get very sentimental about it, So I think it's important you ask some questions about that.
Okay.
Go, Barbara.
Good morning.
Good morning, darling.
So you can understand it like in the view of that all other beings want to be happy and I can wish them happiness and be freedom from suffering. But what does that mean in terms of what I do?
Absolutely, that's the point. No, exactly, Barbara. This is totally the point, Barbara. That's exactly the question. So from the point of view here, we're seeing this is the basis for then beginning to go to the next step. And these incremental steps that then culminate in love and compassion for all beings. So if you want to just take equanimity on its own, moving forward to the next level, just even as equanimity, it's a tough one. But you can practice it day to day. So let's say, do you have children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews?
Yes.
Okay.
Child and grandchildren.
Okay, yes. So you adore your grandchildren, right?
Yes.
Naturally, there's a karmic connection. You have attachment for them, but you also love them. Okay, so let's just say, you've got your grandkid coming. What's his name? Her name?
Jordan.
Jordan. So it's a boy.
Yes.
So let's say Jordan's there and he's going to go next door and play with Fred next door. And you can't stand Fred. He picks his nose, he's mean, he's rude. We understand this, don't we? So you could label that Fred would be in your enemy category. Would you agree with my point here? Simply speaking.
Okay. Yes.
So right there, what's equanimity? First of all, you see, this is the point, saying, Fred wants to be happy just like Jordan. So while Fred's beating Jordan up, you think, let him beat him up because he wants to be happy. That's nihilism. That's not what's implied. So this is where you've got to use intelligence. You can have your poodle whom you adore and have a python next to the poodle. One will kill the other one and kill you too. So it's not a sentimental thing. He wants to be happy. I'll let the python eat my poodle. That's nihilism and absurd. So this is the point here. With wisdom, you observe that Fred's a bit of a wacky kid. And that might be true. He's got delusions. And you can only really see those delusions because you've got your delusions. But you also recognize you've got this aversion to Fred. But you watch like a hawk and check that he's not behaving badly. But you really say to yourself, Fred has the same wish in his heart like my beloved Jordan. Jordan wants to be happy. It's easy to see it, but you make yourself see that is what's driving Fred, and that's even why Fred does horrible things. So he's deluded as a result, but he still wants to be happy. It's a very fundamental point. So then you protect Jordan if that's true, but you don't just leap in with attachment and whack Fred because how dare he hurt my beloved Jordan, which is typically how we go with attachment. So you've got more wisdom, more clarity. It's more nuanced. You're observing, and you want. And then as soon as you see that Fred is a human being, even though he's neurotic, that he wants to be happy, it straight away kind of strips away some of the projections you have about him, and your heart will reach out to him. Right there, automatically, you'll start to see a little human being in there. You'll still be wise with him, but it'll be a very different picture that will come. You with me?
Yes.
So we're meeting friends, enemies, and strangers every day of the week. And because we have attachment, we're so blind. So when we have attachment, lots of attachment, we think Jordan is a saint, and which means you won't even see his bad qualities, even though Fred's mother thinks he's a creep. No, we get all. Not necessarily, but that's the way attachment functions. It blinds us to see the person properly. So when you've got less attachment and less aversion, you'll still adore Jordan and bring him home every night and put him to bed. You won't bring Fred to bed. It's not, I'll swap kids. That's equanimity. No, that's again ridiculous. You've got a karmic connection with Jordan, but you'll have more wisdom even seeing Jordan. You'll be able to see his bad qualities as well, and therefore be more wise and able to help him. So we live our lives with friends, enemies, and strangers. And this can only come even when we understand this from even knowing our own minds to some degree. But already the second we begin to get some equanimity, it begins to calm down the attachment, the aversion, and the ignorance. And that's why we can have empathy for strangers. That's why even if we do have the ability to see a stranger suffer and we can have empathy, that shows we've got some equanimity. We're realizing. But if you've got a very narrow mind, very ignorant and very fundamentalist, and only love certain people and hate other people, and we know lots of people are like that, people are happy when strangers suffer. They're glad when enemies suffer. So we can see we've already got some tendency for this because we're practicing. You understand, Barbara? It's a really good point.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So okay. You have this as your underlying, but you're using discernment.
You must. It's utterly necessary. And that's utterly necessary. I can think about, the people I know in prison. I always quote, my friend on death row, Mitchell, and he's a Buddhist, and he's one of his friends there, and I've met this guy, and I wouldn't know his mind, I'm not clairvoyant, but he told me, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. So hearing that, now if I saw him torturing my sister, I mightn't have so much compassion for him, but just hearing about that, knowing his poor demented mind due to some past karma, he's unable to control his crazy mind, and that's why he's on death row, no doubt, because he carried it out. This tendency to harm people, but he looks like a fairly easygoing fellow. So as soon as you hear that, you can have compassion straight away. He's driven by the wish to be happy, and he deludedly thinks that by torturing people, he'll get happy. That's why we all do bad things to each other, because we're convinced that doing what we want will make us happy. And this is the tragedy. So you still use your discernment, your intelligence. But even then, when you realize karma, that gives you even more compassion. That grows as well. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much. Someone else? Any other points about equanimity?
Venerable Robina?
Yes, darling. Yes, Lisa.
You mean, hey, Lisa. Actually, it's a question actually about what you were talking before about emptiness. I've got a question about emptiness and meditation. I've been meditating on emptiness and I start to feel anxious. I don't feel like I'm having any thoughts about it, but in my body, I physically feel anxious.
Tell me how you meditate on emptiness, Lisa. What do you do?
So I've been reading a couple of the books that I can't even remember. One of the ones on one of Lama Zopa's ones that you had recommended, where he'd done about 4 or 5 talks in New York or something. And there was one about how you would talk about meditate on emptiness. So about trying to refute that there is an I.
Okay, good. All right.
So where is the I, and looking for that. And so I can't exactly remember. So you
get nervous.
What he had said.
So you get a bit nervous. That could be a good sign. That could be a good sign. But as Lama Zopa says, if you're really doing it properly, don't let it put you off, because you can never disappear. They say that when people get a strong feeling of emptiness, they can have a real panic attack, like as if they don't exist. And that's not accurate, of course. So but that's really important. Lama Zopa says it's really important not to push that away. Don't deny that. If you know what you're doing, if you're not doing what you're doing, then don't do it. You shouldn't be doing it, playing with it, if you don't know what you're doing. But it can be threatening if you do this analysis, because we get a sense that the ego is disappearing. But you can't disappear. So it can be a good sign, but you have to work out what it is yourself. If it's really too difficult, you just stop. If it's just something that arises, then you just keep persevering with your logic and your analysis, and just, notice, try and get a sense. Let it help you recognize what you think the I is, if you can work with it that way, if you do know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think it was with the talk about the labels, like there's the base and then you label things on top of it. So during meditations of looking at different things and going through that process. Good. So I hadn't noticed any thoughts themselves that were anxious, but it was just like, like when you feel like butterflies in your stomach, that sort of sensation came up, but nothing associated with it. So what do I do then? Just ignore the sensation and just keep doing it?
I just told you what to do. Ignore it.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say, Lisa, it's not set in stone. Depending on how well a good a practitioner you are and how well you understand all this. If you don't know much at all and you haven't done much of this and you suddenly have a panic attack, stop immediately, please. But if you're doing it properly, as Rinpoche says, as I said to you before, it can be a good sign. So persevere with it. Don't buy into it, because you can't disappear. So just keep going, observing, but observe your mind. Be intelligent about it. Do you understand?
Yes,
good,
thank you.
Darling. Good. Thank you so much. Go on. Yes, sweetheart. Go. Yes.
Hi, Robina.
Yes, Wendy, darling. Talk to me.
Hi. Could you talk a little bit about, you said you had an intellectual understanding of Guru and then you had a heart understanding of Guru.
When did I say that?
I think you said when you were studying, at first you get the intellectual understanding and then you have a heart, there was a heart change for
About what though? On what topic?
About your Guru, your relationship.
Oh, you mean Lama Zopa? No, I said it took me 10 years. I knew intellectually he was my guru. I had a dream. It was very vivid, and a certain Lama pointed it out. It took me 10 years to recognize in my heart that he was my guru. That's what I said. Do you mean what? Do you want me to explain what I meant?
No, I get it. I get it. It's okay.
I mean, yeah. And I think it's very, I mean, this explanation for me, when I met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa together at the same time, immediately I recognized Lama Yeshe, like, was no question. It was a no-brainer for me. He hooked me immediately, and it was clear. But Lama Zopa was there, but the way I experienced him was he was like behind Lama Yeshe. I could see he was a really perfect person. He looked and he was clearly a valid person. I heard his teachings for 2 months. But my heart couldn't connect. So then when I was doing after I became a nun, I did my first retreat. I had this very vivid dream. And I'll tell you the dream, no big deal. And I was in India, and this dream was all of our students in a big teaching with Lama Zopa at Nalanda Monastery. Well, I didn't know Nalanda Monastery then. It was only when I went there years later that I recognized it. But this old ancient monastery in India. And there's a whole group of us. And Lama Zopa was out there, and he called me out. And he put a text, these long folio texts the Tibetans have in their cloth. It's very long. He put one over my shoulder, and then over my other shoulder, he put his yellow robe. And he told me to follow him out. I thought it was a nice dream. So I happened to mention one Lama I knew in Dharamsala after my retreat. I told him this dream. He said, that's the Lama who'll lead you to enlightenment. Well, I was really shocked because I thought Lama Yeshe was my main guru, So I heard that, and I realized you can have more than one root guru. So I put him there, but my heart wasn't connected. It took me 10 years of a lot of work, a lot of practice. And what it means was he obviously knew my relationship with him, because he's clairvoyant, he's a holy being, but it's like I hadn't recognized him. So he's not going to push himself upon me. He would never give me any advice. He'd just crack jokes when he saw me. He didn't in other words, he didn't act like a lama to me. In other words, maybe you're a kung fu, I always think of my kung fu teacher. Before I met my kung fu teacher, if he'd started pushing kung fu onto me and I hadn't even met him yet, I'd be very insulted. He wouldn't touch me until I said, I want your kung fu, please. So it took me 10 years of much practice and much practice. And then after Lama Yeshe passed away and I started to really practice, for me to then one day the penny dropped. And then he just picked me up and started, giving me a hard time like the guru does.
And so that type of love is like devotional love.
Yeah, that's quite different from the
attachment.
love. We can't talk about the love we're discussing here. This is quite different from the teacher. Yeah, because love is wanting a person to be happy. Well, I don't want the guru to be happy because they're a Buddha. That would be you don't say that for the guru. You have it's like if a person's a Christian or have faith in God. It's not the same kind of love. It's like devotion. Yeah, having it's reverence and devotion and seeing them as perfect and seeing them as a manifestation of what you want to become. That's the real relationship with the guru. The reason to have a guru, the only reason, is so that you can use them as your sound. You can use them as your example in front of you. That's what I want to become. We understand that. You want to play tennis, you go to Federer. Federer is like your guru. He's the one who's manifesting tennis for you. You don't say you love him and want him to be happy. You want to become like Federer. So that's the relationship. And that's a very necessary. We all need that. I remember Lama Yeshe said, the Buddha's dead. So the Four Noble Truths will only become real for us when we hear it from a human being right in front of us, whom we have decided is the Buddha for us. And then our view of them as the guru is what makes them powerful for us. If we don't see them as the guru, Lama Zopa, I couldn't see him in that way, so he left me alone. My mind wasn't ready. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
Good, okay. What else, people? Let's keep going with the compassion wing then. I'll just mention some of these 11 points. And all of these, they're just sort of series of little kind of bullet points, but they're all deep meditations and contemplations using analysis that gradually expand the mind, expand, breaking down the barriers that the delusions have created. The delusions have caused us to create enemies and friends and strangers, So this next little bullet point, always hilarious for this one. And I think for this little next point, you just need your calculator, And the next one goes, the heading is, all sentient beings have been our mum. Well, we think, what is Buddha what are they trying to prove here? I'm supposed to hate people or what? Because in our culture, we think mums are the cause of all our suffering. So it's just, but it's just using the idea of a mother who's a person who's nurtured you, given birth to you, taken care of you, and nurtured you. Now, of course, we know lots of mummies can be wacky people and probably don't do that. We know that. But in general, this old Asian idea of the mother is wonderful, So it might be a hard example for us. But I think in any way, it's a good example. But the point is here, it's more like a mathematical thing. I remember one mathematician came to one teaching, and I said to him, well, it seems to me logical. I said, well, the point here is that if you've got beginningless mind, and there are beginningless sentient beings, then logically we have bumped into each other in beginningless times. So logically they've all been my mother beginningless times. He thought it was a load of rubbish. I didn't know what logic he had, but never mind. I didn't meet him again. But it sounds very logical. That's the general idea here, this outrageous view that we bumped into each other countless lifetimes. But the point here is to think if every one of them has been my mother, the only reason we're thinking that is a mother's a person who's said to be a person who nurtures and loves you and takes care of you. So now then it leads to the next point, the third one, number 3. And there are two parts here. There's 3A and 3B, if you like. This typical one, the mother one, would be then the mother is kind. So this is a pretty outrageous one if we have our view in the West. Mothers are the cause of our suffering in people, and people definitely have wacky mothers. Mothers are just like you and me. They're completely deluded, And some people who are called mothers can be very deluded. But we can't handle that in our culture. So the idea that you just think in a blanket way that your mother's kind, we can't begin to get our head around that. But let's just look at it. It's kind of interesting. There's a way of seeing it, I think, the way I like to see it this way. So then it's a powerful practice for us. So first of all, the mother's kind. I think even we should analyze the way we use the word kind. We mean a person is, and I think this is quite powerful, the way we use the word kind, we say a person's kind to me when they do what I want, for God's sake. I mean, how self-centered can you get? It's so embarrassing. We should be embarrassed by that, but we're not. Oh, she's so kind. Why? Well, because she gave me something, because she looks after me. So some people can have a close connection with their mother. I've met many people who've never had a problem with their mother, who adore their mother, who weep when their mother dies, who love their mother. That's incredible. They understand this one without any problem. But what if you've had a struggle with your mummy? And this is pretty typical. I mean, I know now I adore my mother. She's dead, but I love her. And I loved her before she died as well. I had to work on it. But what happens? This is very powerful. What happens? First of all, when I was little, I had attachment for my mother. That's natural. So basically, when you've got attachment for a person, especially if it's your mother, they're literally a saint. Think about that. You only see their good qualities. I mean, I revered my mother. I adored my mother. And I had attachment for her. But guess what? As we start to get older, and now these days, people at 4 and 5 are rejecting their mothers. It took me till I was about 12 to reject my mother. In other words, as you start to grow up, you start to, guess what? You start to find fault. So I remember the moment that I first found fault with my mother. It was like the worst sin in the world. I was absolutely shocked. But it's downhill from there, isn't it? Once you start. That was the moment she fell off the pedestal. And because my attachment started to stop, and I began to find fault with her. I began to get angry. And before you know it, anger takes over, attachment is gone, and now your mother is your worst enemy. This is the most classic experience. Everybody who's a mother knows it vividly. So attachment takes over, changes, and now all you do is see faults, and now she's an enemy. And tragically, many people never get past that. They're still here 97 years old, blaming their mother and hating their mother. I mean, it's so profoundly depressing, you know. So let's just say you have had a mother, or do have a mother who's neurotic, who's attached, who's manipulative. I mean, join the universe. What it is, I think it's just beyond fascinating for me in our culture, with the view that mothers make you. We have this and this is attachment, this incredible hubris, this incredible arrogance of our attachment. It's an assumption that somehow my mother should be a saint. I don't know where that's written. I don't know why we think it, but we do know why. It's attachment assumption. Attachment is this greedy part of us that just assumes if they make me, they'd better be a perfect person. How dare they be less than perfect? That's the assumption of attachment. No wonder we hate our mothers, you know, because they're human beings like you and me. It's inappropriate to dump, and that's why having attachment for your boyfriend, thinking he's perfect, is the same as your mother. It's not fair to that person to dump so much expectation onto them, so much perfection that they can't possess. So it really takes hard work. So what's the learning for us here? If you have had a mother who has been neurotic, who is deluded, well, the learning is this. It's very profound. First of all, kind here doesn't mean that she's done what you want. That's not the kind that means here. It means that, first of all, anything they've done for you, anything they have done for you that is good, it has, just because you don't like them now, just because they've done bad things now, doesn't mean they didn't do those good things. So this is where we really have to almost like paint a new picture of somebody. This is our mother's example here. So the thing is, remember, start writing a list of all the good things she's done for you. So you start writing them. Well, she gave birth to me. I mean, maybe she didn't. Maybe you had a mother who adopted you. That's another discussion. I'll talk about that in a minute. Maybe she gave birth to you. She nurtured you while you were in the womb. She fed you when you came out. She looked after you when you were a little girl. She cleaned your dirty bottom. She cleaned up your dirty nappies, your dirty diapers. She put up with your anger. Baby, tiny, tiny things that we all take for granted. Well, it's her job. I didn't ask to get born. Excuse me, check the last time you had to do anything for anybody. Look at the effort you have to make. Well, even if my feeling is you should have even more kindness towards your mother, more love for your mother if she's neurotic. Because if you're neurotic, it's that much harder to take care of somebody. So you've got to paint a new picture. There were so many things that she did that were, in fact, nurtured you, took care of you, helped you. You can't deny those, but we just don't want to think about them. We only want to remember the bad things. It's a very powerful exercise. So the other one is, let's say your mother gave you away. Then you think, well, she didn't do anything for me. Well, you know what? She did. And you should be prostrating with gratitude in tears every day that she didn't abort you. No one ever thinks that. All we think of is that she gave me away. Well, she did, but if you know karma and you've come into this compassion wing with a knowledge of karma, that tempers your view. You know why she gave you away, due to your past karma. But even if she did give you away, I mean, I've got many people I know. I remember the time when I was younger, and a couple of my sisters, we all had abortions, and another person we knew wanted, she was in the 60s, consciously decided she wouldn't have an abortion. She decided, she risked losing her boyfriend in the 60s, being a good Catholic. It was shocking to do. She decided, I wouldn't have an abortion. She gave the daughter away, and that girl can't stand her. Naturally, because she thinks my mother gave me away. She has no idea that my sister, not my sister, a friend I had, she made a decision not to abort. That is profound. She decided to let a person live. That you should never give up being grateful to your mother for that. That's incredible. I remember a friend of mine, a man I met years ago, I didn't know him until he was like in the 40s. He told me that his mother told him when he was like in his 40s, out of the blue, she told him that when he was in the womb, she was very clear she was going to get an abortion. She was in the hospital, everything was organized, and she had to get up and go walk somewhere and turn the door handle and go somewhere to go to the abortion, and she changed her mind. He was so moved by that, he could not believe it. Like a miracle. It was incredible. So that's there's many things that people have done. And this is not just for your mother, this is for everybody. Paint a new picture of everybody, instead of seeing through the lenses of your aversion, your thwarted attachment. That's a powerful method to think of your mother being kind. Now, the second one, 3B, this even seems initially more ridiculous, but it's more profound logic. All beings are kind. Now, this is based on dependent arising completely. Or how everything is interdependent. And the logic of this one is this, it's pretty straightforward. But you've got, like all of these things, we hear them, we recognize the logic, but we forget to practice them. We sink back into our own status quo views, So this one is marvelous. And it goes like this. This is the logic of this one, 3B. You think about it. Since you were conceived up to now, there's not a single thing that has facilitated your life that isn't the work of sentient beings, that isn't the result of the work of sentient beings. Think about it. Your clothing, my glasses, your body itself, the food you eat, every single thing that facilitates your life. You check it, you look at it, you look at the back, and you're going to see it's the work of sentient beings. Since you're conceived, right there, since you're conceived. Even you think about your body. One thing we think of, this is my body, this is me, this is my body. Well, the great bodhisattvas would know that what's your body? Since I got conceived in my mother's womb, and the egg and sperm came together, and she started to know that I was there, my mind had joined her egg and sperm. So what did she do? Even more fundamental, what is this body? It's nothing other than a mountain of fishes and fishes and cows and chickens and God knows what the creatures that she put into her mouth, that turned into her body, that turned into my body. So what is this little body that comes out, the squirting little body that came out of the womb? It's a mountain of fishes and then all the carrots and the other vegetables and the creatures who died for those. So what is this body that's my body that's so special? It's not at all. That's why the great bodhisattvas, as Koti-Senchab Rinpoche said, one bodhisattva, when they're really at this level, probably realize emptiness as well. The action of cutting off their hand to feed to a starving animal is as inconsequential as a leaf falling off a tree. So this one, just realizing that whatever we have in our life, whatever we do, every single tiny thing we eat, the house we live in, the couch, the things we have, all the things, every single tiny thing, it's the handiwork of sentient beings. And it's the death of many of them. Every single thing. Every single thing. I always think of the example of walking into a supermarket, looking for my Vegemite. The Australians like our Vegemite. And I'm looking up at the aisle, and there's a sign above. Well, someone wrote that sign. Someone did the typography. Then I walk down, and people designed the packets, and this ugly black and yellow design. I don't like the design of Vegemite, but never mind. Somebody did graphic design, designed the jar, designed the label, did the typesetting, wrote the words, proofread it, typed it, printed it. People made the paper. The paper comes from trees, the creatures who died. Every tiny component of that Vegemite is the handiwork of thousands of sentient beings. So now, bodhisattvas see that, but what do we see? I see Vegemite only through the lenses of what I want. And I'm prepared to thank them for making it. I'm prepared to appreciate their design, even though I don't, because I'm getting what I want. We see everything through the lenses of attachment, through my needs. That's it. Natural. And we don't even think we're being self-centered. I mean, a bodhisattva They talk about one bodhisattva in his cave meditating. He was called the always crying one, because every time he saw anything, he saw that it was the work of sentient beings, so he burst into tears, Bodhisattvas would walk through bodhisattvas would walk through the supermarket automatically, no attachment. They're looking for their Vegemite, no problem. But there's no attachment, there's no self-cherishing, there's no self-centeredness. There's this overwhelming awareness of all the hard work of sentient beings. Every tiny thing in a supermarket, the millions of human beings, the millions of animals who've died. These are facts. This is not like, this is science. But we don't see it. Why? Because we're overwhelmed by our own needs, our own attachment. And we're sort of prepared to be kind. As long as the girl at the counter is kind to me, I'll smile at her. As long as I get what I want, I'm prepared to be kind to the supermarket. But if they get vegetables that are too old, or flowers that are boring, or Vegemite that's ugly, I'm not going to go back, because we don't get what we need. So we have this semblance of kindness and generosity and thankfulness on top of our attachment, as long as we get what we need. That's how we all are. We're on the edge of insanity, really, on the edge of being utterly self-centered. So this is outrageous, this level of attachment. It's really quite shocking to think that we have to remove even this, because it's blocking us from being who we really are. That's the point. Another point here that's important, I haven't mentioned. As we keep hearing, the delusions like attachment and aversion, these are the source of our problems, okay? But as we all know, when you read the Bodhisattva teachings, you hear about a delusion called self-cherishing. It's a different take on things. I'll explain as well as I can. So, from the point of view of the wisdom wing, which is the work on controlling your body, controlling your speech, controlling your mind, the main emphasis there is you study the delusions. And the main problem there, even as an ego grasping it, that comes later, but the main problem effectively in day-to-day life, and that's what's expressed in the Four Noble Truths, is attachment. So attachment is the enemy. As we're just talking all the time, attachment is the main voice of ego grasping. It cuts us off from others. It makes us angry. It gets us upset. It causes all the dramas. Attachment is the problem. Now, from the point of view, so that's what has to be subdued in the first stage. That's what renunciation is, giving up attachment. Now, in the compassion wing, it's framed differently. As I said, everything is framed in terms of sentient beings, breaking down the barriers that delusions have constructed that create sentient beings, separate sentient beings, me from separate. So now, the main enemy here, though, and if you like, it's a consequence of attachment, it's called selfishness. That's the term we use in the West, in English. They have it self-cherishing in Tibetan. It just means selfishness, putting self first. So it's a consequence of attachment. You could put it that way. So the main enemy in the beginning is attachment. Let go of attachment. The main enemy here is to let go of putting self first, and we're trying to make this paradigm shift where we put others first. That's what exchanging self for others means. That's why you hear about self-cherishing all the time. It's very specific. It's not listed in low ring. You won't see it self-cherishing. It's a consequence of attachment, is the way to say it, I'd say. And it's the main enemy, because what we're trying to achieve here is exchanging self for others, putting others first, cherishing others more than self. That's the enemy here. So everything's in reference to that. It's quite a specific thing, Any questions about all this yet? Any questions? About equanimity, and then all mothers kind, and now all sentient beings are kind. This one about all sentient beings are kind is really related to dependent arising, that everything is interdependent, and we're seeing it in relation to sentient beings. It's very powerful. Any questions about that one? Janice, did you have a question? No? Anybody have a question? Yes, Wendy, sweetheart.
I have a question, because sometimes in the West, there's a form of martyring and denigration of self that happens. Where, like, I'm going, is that renunciation, and you actually have to go through that process of painful putting self above others? Or sometimes it's an ego trip to do that, right? But there's also a point where you can just keep, it's like a form of self-hurting.
I know, but this is the trouble. It's got nothing to do with what's being said here. And this is why hearing these teachings about putting, exchanging self for others, as Pabanka Rinpoche says, you've got to be a suitable vessel. And what that means, and this is why it's so important, Wendy, to hear these teachings in this orderly way. This is university level, okay? But our trouble is we read all the teachings and we just hear it all as equal. It's not equal. There's no way in the universe, if we are still at the first stages of being a neurotic victim, unhappy, low self-esteem, self-loathing, anger, depression, anxiety, if you at that level, you've done no work on your own mind, you haven't controlled your body and speech, you completely think the whole world is the cause of all your suffering, there's no way in the universe you can even begin to hear these teachings about exchanging self for others. That's demented practice. It is not your practice. And this is where the trouble is. I mean, this is like advanced. These teachings on exchanging self for others are really radical ones, and we've got a bit of time, we can still talk. Like they're expressed in the text, like the 8 verses of the 8 verses, this Tibetan text. These teachings were kept secret because they were so outrageous, so opposite to the world, you know. So this is why we've got to know these teachings are incremental, they're gradual. There's no way in the world, if you're overwhelmed by misery and depression, that you can even pretend to put it others first, because that's what you do anyway. And that's the thing, that like you're the martyr. If you're the, you know, it seems to be, if you look at the way we are as ordinary samsaric people, I mean, we're all variations, but some people are more volatile. When their attachment doesn't get what they want, they get angry and shout and yell. That's my method. Very clear. In all my life, I've been, you know, looking like I'm so courageous, so brave. Well, Robina says what she wants and does what she wants, but I'm around hurting people. There's no question. Now, another one, I can think of one of my sisters. She was always the good girl. She was always, and she had as much attachment as an aversion as me, but her aversion wasn't, her aversion, and this is many people, some of you right now hearing me will recognize yourself. Your aversion doesn't manifest as anger, shouting and yelling. Your aversion is internalized, it becomes more like depression and despair. But the other one is that we've both got attachment. So my attachment was to be seen and to be heard and to shout and yell and make a big fuss. Another sister's attachment was to be seen as a good girl. So she walked around being mummy's little helper, doing everything, sacrificing herself. So she did, because she was a good girl. So that's attachment, to be seen as a good girl. I had attachment to do what I wanted. Attachment manifests in different ways. So some person who doesn't have volatile anger will be that little person, and they become a doormat. And then with that person who doesn't know their own mind and doesn't see that they're craving to be loved and approved of and to be a lovely girl and speak nice and do nice and be mummy's helper, they can't see their minds at all. So then when they hear they've got to sacrifice themselves, they become even more of a martyr, and they've got no idea what it means. So we've got to know our own mind well. We've got to do the wisdom wing first. That's a suitable vessel. We've got to know where we're at. So a person who's always meek and sweet and lovely and always looking like they're being a good girl, they've got to start looking at their own aversion, their own fears of being criticised, and their own attachment to being seen as a lovely girl, and maybe have the courage to stand up and speak sometimes, you know. And the person like me's got to learn to shut up. Do you understand?
I do.
It's really tricky. And the key to success in understanding this is this clear way that Buddhism presents the delusions being neurotic and I-based, and the virtues being other-based. So then, in other words, again, even equally, you think of a person who's very arrogant, but a person who's got low self-esteem. We see them as completely opposite. Well, you know what's a bit depressing? They're symptoms of the same problem, Wendy. A person who's got, who thinks they're a creep. All delusions exaggerate an aspect of something. So low self-esteem exaggerates your ugliness. Arrogance exaggerates your importance. And they're the flip side of the same coin. When an arrogant person is insulted, that turns into sort of deflation and low self-esteem. So if we've got low self-esteem, I'm sorry to tell you, it's because we've got arrogance. Because with low self-esteem, we think we're a creep, but actually you look at it, it's like, how dare other people be better than me? We actually prefer to be better. We don't dare to think that. But that's the thing. In other words, if you had a person who didn't have low self-esteem and didn't have arrogance, that person would be humble and they would be confident. So it's very tricky. It's again this distinction between the neurotic states of mind and how they all exaggerate something, and the virtuous states of mind, and how that we can mix them completely. So, this is why attachment and love are so hard to distinguish, because attachment's a honey-covered razor blade. It can look like you love and adore a person. It's only because you're attached to them. Arrogance, I always use a simple example. Two people who both gorgeous, both best at whatever they do, and they're in a group. Well, the arrogant one will be terrified of being seen as less than they are, and will be resentful to meet somebody who would be better. They'll be very kind of rigid, very brittle, very nervous. A person with confidence and would be humble and will be delighted to meet somebody who is better than they are, because they're content in who they are. So this is really profound. So confusing low self-esteem with humility is a big mistake, and confusing a bossy, loud person with arrogance is also a mistake. The Dalai Lama is a real show-off. The Dalai Lama is really kind of charismatic and powerful. I remember when one person told me about being in a big media conference, a press conference. He walked in and he just became the boss. He told the camera to go here, do there, you do this, you do that. He was a complete control freak. But he's wonderful with it. But he's as humble as anything. So we really get to be confused with these,
Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. So after that, the next step, this is already pretty profound, seeing the kindness of others. And then the next one is we start going through the various, some of the techniques, some of the different techniques of the exchanging self for others model. So the next one goes, and people do these in retreat for years. These are simple little thinkings. They're like little bullet points. But the next one would be now, you begin, it's a bit like equanimity, but it's you. No, sorry, the fourth one, the conclusion from the third one. The conclusion, number 4 is a conclusion. I must repay their kindness. And we're talking people who are really advanced by this point in these meditations. It's a profound conclusion to come to on the basis of seeing all beings are kind and all mothers are kind. I must repay their kindness. Already it's becoming really expansive. That's the fourth one. I must repay their kindness. So this is increasing your wish to never give up. Practicing love, compassion, and bodhicitta is all part of this process. So the next lot are now gradually doing this incremental shift where we start from putting ourselves first, now to put finally others first. So the next step is to now think others are equal to me. This is like equanimity. It's exactly the same as equanimity. The difference is this. With equanimity, you're seeing that friends, enemies, and strangers are equal to each other. But now we're putting ourselves in there and we're thinking that everybody is equal to me. Everybody wants to be happy. Everybody doesn't want to suffer. And that is already a profound shift when you start to realize everyone's just like me. Everyone's exactly the same as me. So we're moving towards exchanging ourselves for others. So then I think you then start to think about the disadvantages of cherishing yourself. This sounds so peculiar to us. That sounds like selfish, But it's a very profound one. When we can really realize, I always remember when I first heard about Bodhichitta from His Holiness, and I was just like too overwhelming for me. It was too high. I couldn't get a handle on it. It was too difficult for me. But His Holiness said, when he said this, it really helped my mind. He said, if you want to help others, practice compassion. If you want to help yourself, practice compassion. We have a big reluctance to this because we think it sounds like self-centered. We'd rather hate ourselves, which is really disgusting. This is profound. So this point here is look at the disadvantages in your own life to being self-centered. So if you can't think of yourself, think of other people you know who are really self-centered. It is a no-brainer. Look at the disadvantages to that person of having self-cherishing. Nobody likes them. They're always miserable. They're always complaining. They never get what they want. They're always finding fault. No one can stand being around them. Just put yourself like that. No wonder you're miserable. The first level of practice in junior school, we're looking at how attachment causes us suffering. This is another approach to the same thing, seeing how your own self-centeredness. But it's hard to hear this. We don't mind admitting to attachment, but we don't like admitting to being selfish. We think it's very painful. I don't put myself first. What are you talking about? And it's very hard to see that if we suffer, it's because of self-centeredness, because of putting self first. It's very painful, especially as Wendy said, because in our culture, this is really anathema, It's hard to hear it. Then the next one is look at the advantages to yourself of cherishing others. But this is the minefield that also Wendy talked about. All the people who run around being mummy's little helper, they all become doormats. They all wonder why they're all exhausted and drained and people misuse them and abuse them because they're not realizing that their love and compassion are completely polluted by attachment. It's very hard to see. This is where I joke about good girls and bad girls. It's easy to see bad girls are a problem. I can never doubt for a minute I had problems. But when you're a good girl, it's much harder to see you've got problems because you look like such a nice girl. It's much trickier for you to see your mind. Do you understand my point, people? So this one is to see the advantages to yourself of being a nice person. So that's if it's driven by attachment, then it's a problem. It's neurotic. This is profound already. So look at some people we know. Who people adore. People love them because they're gorgeous to be around because they always think of other people. I always remember our friend Harry. People must know our friend Harry, a meditator. But everybody in the whole world who's around Harry thinks everybody feels that you are Harry's best friend because Harry just shows such love for you, such unassuming, normal, happy. You feel so loved by Harry. And everyone, people say that about the Dalai Lama. I remember at one point I interviewed lots of journalists who interviewed His Holiness. Everybody is just blissed out by how they felt completely seen and heard and loved by the Dalai Lama. You could not believe you felt like you shone, So some people are like that. So look at the advantages to a person who cherishes others, but in a healthy way, not in a neurotic way. Everybody adores them. They're just marvelous people. It's so clear. This is hard to hear, this stuff. These are the thinkings for ourselves. And then we do the final stages of the practice. I'm sure I've missed some points. And all this is really culminates in the practice of Tonglen. This is coming from the 8 verses. This is coming from this wonderful little text. Usually Tibetans are so poetic with their titles. This is the most boring one of all. It's called the 8 verses. Well, of mind training. It sounds even more boring. So it's by this Tibetan dude called holy dude called Lungri Tangpa. And it's famous. All the Tibetans learn it, and many of us have memorized it, And it's just outrageous. This outrageous. Let's go through it. This outrageous presentation of different ways to think of exchanging self for others. So when we get to this point, when we're really seeing the benefit, and this is what's hard to hear. A person at this point, when they're really able to practice this, I mean, they're talking about a really sincere level of really becoming an amazing practitioner. You're so driven by this wish to become a Buddha because you are so overwhelmed by the suffering of sentient beings. It's incredible. We're sort of moving towards all that, but I'm still talking about a person who's trying to accomplish this. Then you'll do everything you can. In this whole approach of exchanging self for others, one attitude is called transforming problems into happiness. It's a whole area of practice at this really advanced level, where because you are so wanting to achieve the goal of Buddhahood, because you can't bear the suffering of sentient beings, you will do anything to smash ego grasping, to smash self-cherishing, to smash attachment. It's a bit like, I always think of fanatic sportsmen. I remember reading a long article about Lance Armstrong before he was discovered to be naughty. This total obsessive fanatic, I mean, people admire that level of obsessiveness. Admire. For him, in other words, the transforming problems practice is you love the high mountains. The more tough, the bigger the challenge, the more pain in the muscles, the more sweat, the more effort, the better. You're in heaven. That's transforming problems. So, of course, we're not discussing going up a mountain here. We're discussing being happy when bad things happen, being delighted when someone abuses you, being glad when you're sick, being glad when you don't get what you want. I mean, it's a demented level of practice, and we can't pretend. We can try our best once a month, but it's an outrageous level of practice. So the 8 verses is a classic presentation of these stages. So the first verse is already beyond outrageous. I cannot tell you. It's so shocking. Even just the first verse, and they get worse every verse. The first one is something like, when you're with others, maybe there's a second one. This is the second verse. When you're with others, this is the second one. When you're with others, see yourself as the lowest of all. What am I saying? See yourself as the lowest of all and see others as superior. So for 99% of us, because we have a sense of self, a neurotic one, we are attached, we are needy, we do want to be approved of, we do want to be loved, we're worrying every second what people are thinking about us, every second, it's always there, it's the deepest attachment, the hardest one to go. This is just demented, It's just too painful. This is the greatest pain. We know that. When we're hurt, when someone offends us, when someone insults us, when we heard that someone talked about us behind our back, it is the most devastating suffering. We know that. And that's because we have ego grasping, and because we have attachment, and because we have self-cherishing. So if we're wanting to give up ego grasping and attachment and self-cherishing, it's obvious the best method. It's like, going up the high mountains. If you go to the gym and just do your 4 push-ups and you stop when it starts to hurt, you'll never change. So you've got to have the hurt. Pain is good, There's no gain without pain. We know that. And that's this level of practice. So you've got to be a suitable vessel. So the second verse is completely insane. I mean, I joke and say if you're a therapist and you recommend this to your client, they could sue you. It's just completely demented, But you've got to know where you're at. And it's a powerful practice. You've got to catch yourself and you do it. It's profound. I mean, it's not natural for us. So my sense is this, even if we can't, it says when you're with others at all times. It's clearly absurd. It's a high being talking this. So how do you practice this? That's a good point that Barbara made. How do you practice these things? Well, how you practice this one is excellent. Like at work, in your group of friends, in your family, there are going to be people we just don't like much. They annoy us. Forget if you hate them. They annoy you. Person at work, you just don't like them. Well, you know what? Consciously make a decision in your own mind to find one thing about that person that they do better than you. That's this practice. That's how you practice it. And it's your own business. You don't go up and praise them. It's your own business. Consciously, especially a person you don't like, think of just one quality. Maybe they've got prettier ears. Maybe their feet are nicer. Maybe they're thinner. Maybe they're more intelligent. Be very precise. One quality. That's the practice of this one. Of course, eventually you get to the point where everybody will be like that for you. That's too advanced. Start with one person. The next verse, the next three verses, no, not all of the verses, I'm missing one, but the next, the 4, 5, and 6, I think. 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4, 5, and 6. These are outrageous. And it seems to me this 4 is like this verse that's kind of like about the world out there. It's not touching you so much for your personal life. This is my own way of putting it. And there's something like when you read about or see the rare person who is evil in their nature. Well, I'm sorry, that's back in 8th century, 10th century, 11th century, 14th century Tibet, when you might have heard about 1.5, naughty people. But look at our mad world, where we're just driven, we are sort of overwhelmed by the most demented behavior of insanely unsuffering people. So this is not rare for us. We're overwhelmed by crazy people, evil people, demented people, pedophiles, wackos, terrorists, mad politicians, psychopaths, all the words we use. It says a person evil in nature. How sweet, And how are you going to think about them? I forget each one. The analogy, I'm sorry. Katie, can you find the 8 verses for me? Or Mary Ellen. Either way.
Yes.
Yeah. So what's the first one? Have you got it, Mary Ellen?
Determined to attain the
Yeah,
greatest
no, not that. So go to the verse where it says about people of evil of nature. What is it I'm supposed to do about them? How am I supposed to see them?
Whenever I see people in nature and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare, dear ones as if I had found a precious jewel.
Okay, that's the one. Precious treasure. People are overwhelmed by negativity and suffering. I mean, that's so many people on this planet, isn't it? I will see them as if I found a precious treasure. So again, what does that mean? It means, remember the point of these verses, the whole job that's trying to be accomplished here is to smash your delusions because they are the obstacle to your realizations. That's the point. Like Lance Armstrong wants to smash to conquer every mountain so he can get the best, highest race, the best medal. So we want to conquer the obstacles to the achievement of our realizations. And the point about this too, and I said it before, but I haven't actually mentioned it overtly. Every second we're doing this, we are overtly working on smashing ego, self-cherishing, but we are also smashing at the same time ego grasping. We're helping us realize emptiness because we're smashing both aspects. Compassion and wisdom are specific approaches. The wisdom was specific is about the delusions and about emptiness. The compassion one is about this, what we're discussing here, but they both help each other. Every time you think about emptiness, it gets you closer to compassion. Every time you try to smash self-cherishing and you get compassion, it makes you closer to getting emptiness. They help each other. One is implicit at one point and the other is implicit at the other point. And we've got to understand that. So that the next one is my sense is getting closer to home. When somebody accuses you of doing something, read it out, Mary Ellen, the next one.
When someone who I have benefited and whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard
that's the one before that.
Oh, sorry. When out of envy of others mistreat me, with abuse and insults or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others.
Okay, this is like when you've been accused of doing something you didn't do. This is like getting closer to home. This is like at work or something. Or somebody in the family said you did this, but you didn't do it. This is a major, outrageous practice. The first instinct when we're accused of doing something we didn't do is this is the major way, think about it, that we mostly suffer on this planet. People have been wrongly accused. Your husband hurt you when you didn't do nothing to deserve it. People accuse you of lying and you didn't. People accuse you of stealing and you didn't. This is the nightmare. The number of people I know who are in prison who've been innocent, who go mad because you've been accused of something you didn't do. This is an incredible practice. This is like putting atomic bombs on delusions. You take the blame. This is again the martyr one, the worst thing possible. Martyrs love to take the blame, but that's not what we're discussing here. This is an outrageous practice. So someone says even if you just broke that cup, just don't defend yourself. It's incredible, but you've got to be brave and do it appropriately. It's incredible practice. Now the third one, this is like your beloved husband, your child. This is closest to home. Read it out, Mary Ellen.
When someone who I have benefited and whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru.
That's the worst one. Like, I think the number of people who come to me like parents, mummies, whose children have rejected them, I can't even bear to think about that pain, you know. It's just beyond bearing. And the number of old people just die rotting away in old people's homes because their children have rejected them. This is beyond suffering. This is the worst, hardest practice of all, you know. The person you've given your life to. People who've spent their life serving somebody in a relationship and the next day they come home to a note, I've left you, you know, for a younger version. Unbelievable pain. This is where real practice, this is real life, you know. And everybody's life is like this. This is where everybody's suffering is. Apart from the suffering of sickness and things and poverty, these are the most painful sufferings, you know. And these verses are outrageous. So you've got to be a suitable vessel, as Ven.Robina says. But remember the point here, the implicit one is emptiness. Because if you're practicing, because what you do, so remember that due to ego grasping, the root delusion, we literally have this sense of a separate self. And the more ego grasping, the more attachment, the more anger, the more the world is this nightmarish place out there. But as you control your body and speech, junior school, you start to break that down. As you control your mind, you break it down even more. As you get to the compassion wing, radically breaking it down. And even here with Bodhichitta, this culminates now in this Tong Len, which is the 6th verse, the 6th verse, I think, the 7th verse, 6th verse. We'll say it. This is where this Tong Len practice comes from. So read the 6th verse.
In short, both directly and indirectly, do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering.
That's it. This is where Tong Len has come from. Tong Len means taking, giving, okay? So what it is, it's a practice completely, this is the actual expression, that the technique that is finally culminates in this paradigm shift of putting others first, which is then comes to Bodhichitta. So this practice, some people in the West love this practice. I find it quite amazing. It's a really high practice. You do it in meditation. You can do it in meditation. So you'd use your breath. It's a very simple way to do it. There's a multitude of ways you can do it. So basically you visualize, and think of even a person as we're talking now, a person whom you adore. Start with a person you adore, who's sick, who's got a headache maybe, something, and they're in front of you. So the meditation is when you visualize, you imagine, you do the taking first. You breathe in their headache. You breathe in their sickness as like yucky smoke. You imagine breathing in, and you visualize it. One way to do it is to visualize like a little rock at your heart, like you're self-cherishing. And when you breathe in this yucky smoke, it smashes your self-cherishing. So the attitude is you would rather have the suffering than them. So this method is not to get you to get a headache. You're not trying, and this is also not a healing technique. This is not to help this person stop getting a headache. This technique is to help you smash your self-cherishing, utilizing this person's suffering to help you get rid of your own rubbish and develop this brave attitude that I would rather have the suffering. You hear many people talk this way. Parents talk this way. I wish I could have the suffering, they say. That's exactly what we're trying to do here. So it's a powerful method to get right to the root of the self-cherishing. I would rather have the suffering than them. You don't actually take on suffering at all. So it's not to take upon yourself suffering. You're not trying to get a headache. And you're not trying to cure them. There's lots of methods you can help to cure them. This is for your sake. It's a method for you to smash ego grasping, to smash self-cherishing. Then when you breathe out all your good things, all your merit, all your qualities, all your good health, and you breathe out this blissful light, and you imagine them, you give it to them. So the bottom line is, okay, this is an important point too. I'm getting close to time to finish, I'm sorry. What to do? 7 minutes. So, okay. What? Okay. What? We're all right? Okay, good. So, one thing to say too. There's compassion. Love is, may you be happy. Delight in someone else's happiness. Compassion is, may you not suffer. But there's an extra level here that is unique to the Bodhisattva path. And that is called great compassion, Maha Karuna. And it's not only, oh my God, look at that suffering. May they not have it. It is, what can I do to take it away? And that's what we're doing. That's what this is the unique one of the Bodhisattva. It's called great compassion. It's a technical term. So they say, oh, never mind that. So, or then what you could say is that Tong Len is like an added cream on the top. Not only, oh my God, look at that person with a headache, I wish they didn't suffer. Not only, you know what, how can I help them? But not only that, but you know what, I'd rather have it myself. It's not, you're not going to take it upon, you won't take their headache away, but it's this attitude in meditation that you're trying to accomplish and in your life. So what that does is it makes you really courageous that you would take upon yourself that suffering if you could. And then this is where this doesn't, it's not just self-centered. I mean, it's not just for yourself. When you've really got this, you will do anything you can to take away someone else's suffering. And bodhisattvas will do anything they can. And that's why I think I'll finish with this story. I always tell this story. If you've heard it before, then fantastic. If you haven't, then fantastic. Our friend Harry, I mentioned before. He's an American fellow. Many people know him. And he's a meditator for many years. And people would always say, oh, you know, Harry's a bodhisattva, Harry's a bodhisattva. And I'd say, oh, well, I don't know, he's a nice fellow. And I told you, everyone adores being around Harry, so it's a good sign. So anyway, the story, he was at Copan, this is years ago, must be in the 90s, I don't remember, before cell phones anyway, it's 80s maybe. And he was going to go up, he had a cave, he's still got a cave up there, I think he hasn't been there lately. Him and Mary Colony is his partner. They both got caves up there, we're up there near, beyond Lama Zopa's, in the Sherpa country, you know, up in the mountains, 5,000 meters up. So he was going up to his cave to meditate. He's been meditating for years. So the story goes something like this. He was getting ready to go, and then he left. And then Lama Zopa said he had a dream that Harry, because they walk up those mountains, you trek up there, it's quite dangerous. So Lama Zopa said he had a dream in which Harry would die. So to get a message to Harry not to go. Well, first of all, my side comment is Lama Zopa doesn't sleep. So it can't have been a dream. It was his clairvoyance, but he's just being humble. So anyway, Harry had already left. They couldn't get a message to him. So then Lama Zopa asked Geshe Lama Kontrog, this amazing great yogi Lama, you know, who Lama Yeshe was at the Sarah J Monastery with in the 40s and everything, 50s. And he was a meditator, spent years and years up in the mountains, no food, no sleep, no anything. It was extraordinary. He lived in Vajrayogini's Pure Land, Lama Zopa said, a totally amazing being. But he looked like a grumpy old grandpa. He scared the life out of people. He's so grumpy. But he's a holy being. So he was there. So Lama Zopa said to Geshe Lama Kontrog, pray for Harry. So this is a story Harry told me later. He was going up this treacherous mountain path with his big pack on his back. And anybody who's been up there knows that they're pretty treacherous. And, you know, really treacherous. And people falling off, the yaks fall off all the time. When I think was it you and Mary Ellen, was it you when I nearly fell off? Was it you that time when you were there? I nearly fell off. The yak nearly knocked me over the mountain. The yak herder got very mad at me. Anyway, obviously I didn't fall. So anyway, the point is Harry was going up and he told us later that part of the main path had been cut down because of an avalanche. So they had to go this side path, which is really treacherous. I mean, 1,000-foot drops, you know. And these porters, I mean, they're incredible. One of my friends was a porter for a while. He said, all I could see was my feet because they have these massive 60-kilo packs on their head and they're bent over double, you know. So anyway, Harry's gone up the path and a nun was with him. She must have told this story first. She was behind. So he was going up the path with his big pack and he suddenly sees 4 porters coming down with their big packs in this treacherous path. So the first thought, he told me this, the first thought that arose in his mind was, okay, 4 of them, 1 of me. I'll step to the side. So there's a whole kind of logic you use in there, in all those different practices that I mentioned, where you just really use the logic that I'm only one person and 4 is more than 1, so I'm less important. I mean, of course, it's demented. No one thinks that. But he said those thoughts to himself. And he stepped to the side of the mountain, to the edge by the cliff, right to the edge. Then it was also intense and so quick, and they're coming very quickly. And then he said to himself, if they knock me, I won't hold on. So they knocked him, and he didn't hold on. And his feet are on the ground, and his pack is pulling him. And he said, I had a psychic vision of the entire fall. I saw my body crash to the ground. And then he said, he felt his feet are on the ground, his pack is pulling him, and he's not holding on. And he said, he felt the hands of Geshe Lama Kontrog forcefully pushing him, so he reversed direction, and he fell into the path, fell into the Sherpas, you know. So First of all, the real point I want to tell you there is you can't just be like that overnight unless you've done some if you see Federer playing tennis, you know he didn't do it overnight. He's practiced for years and years and years. He's the proof of the pudding. Well, that's the proof of the pudding, that Harry has clearly done practice over many years. And clearly he had bodhicitta. And that was the power of that bodhicitta, that completely exchanging self for others spontaneously as a result of his practice, that was the catalyst for the holy guru, for the Buddha, who has this power. The holy beings, even the lowest level bodhisattva, is capable of manifesting their mind in 100 different bodies simultaneously. By the time you become to the Buddha, you can manifest in countless bodies. Of course, this sounds like science fiction to us. This is all part of what you're capable of as you realize emptiness and as you get bodhicitta, as you accomplish these two wings, So clearly, Geshe-la Khontrok, there he was. He saved his life, literally reverse direction. So I think it's a good story to end on. So that's emptiness and bodhicitta together. You can't have both. Only one wing is not enough. You can even, with bodhicitta alone, you can even lose bodhicitta. This is very sobering. But you can't lose emptiness. So emptiness on its own is not enough. You just disappear into bliss and space and forget about others. Compassion is not enough. You've got to have wisdom. The two together is what we need. A bird needs two wings. Okay. That'll do, Mary Ellen. We're done. We're cooked.
Can we do our prayers?
Let's do our prayers. Let's read the Heart Sutra. Finish with the Heart Sutra. Let's finish with the Heart Sutra.
Okay.
Just to put the imprints of Buddha's amazing teachings on emptiness into our minds yet again. You either contemplate as I read or you read with me, as you wish. So visualizing Buddha sitting there in meditation, up in the Vulture Peak, little tiny little spot up in the sky, full of all these people sitting in the sky and all around, listening. And he's channeling, Buddha's in meditation, he's channeling his thoughts to the minds and the mouths of Shariputra and Avalokitesvara, the 10th level bodhisattva. And they're the ones having the conversation. But it's actually Buddha giving the teachings. Buddha gave his teachings like this apparently quite a lot. Thus did I hear at one time. The Bhagavan was dwelling on mass of Vulture's mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara, looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara: how should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara said this to the Venerable Sharadvatiputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this, correctly and repeatedly beholding those 5 aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. No visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there's no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times also manifestly, completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it's not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared. Ta ta om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhisvaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokitesvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, Arya Avalokitesvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. All right. Mary Ellen, that's great. So we just, okay, give us up. Do our dedication for the whole time we've been together and for all the virtue we've ever created. And all the virtue everybody has ever created. We dedicate all of this. Got the prayers there? Let's do the prayers. Mary Ellen? Yeah.
Oops.
So we're thinking, we're dedicating, dedicating all of this virtue we've created. This, and what that means is, remembering, understanding karma, every millisecond of whatever our mind does sows seeds. So we're just having this 2 hours of, all squeezing our brains, trying to listen to all these things, trying to aspire to doing all this. This is incredible practice. Unbelievable. 2 whole hours. Amazing. So delighted. So say it in English. Through these merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. That just puts the seed in our mind of exactly that aspiration. How amazing. May the supreme jewel Bodhichitta that has not arisen arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. And then the prayers of all our holy lamas, His Holiness Dalai Lama, and then any other, and all lamas of Rinpoche, all our teachers, anybody who's living a virtuous life. We make strong aspirations they live long, because the world needs them badly. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. 2 lamas over too. So, yeah, this is because Lama Zopa is the director of our centre, the boss of our centre, and he's the Lama of some of us, but you think if he's not yours, and any other Lamas, any other teachers you have, you're thinking that we're aspiring for them to live long as well. So you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honouring the 3 jewels, saviour of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Okay, Mary Ellen, thank you, darling. That's it. Thank you, Robina. Thank you, darlings. Keep trucking. See you all again somewhere. Thank you, for receiving your cutter. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Katie, for your cutters. Look at you, how wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Much love. See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ven.Robina. Thank you so much.
Oh, so
thank you, Robina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nice to see you.
Good, yes. I'm leaving now.